After 2.5 years of training, Luffy's continuous string of victories often gave people the impression that he would never lose, no matter how strong his opponents were. However, Luffy has actually suffered quite a few crushing defeats where he stood absolutely no chance. These were battles where, from the very first exchange, it was clear there was an insurmountable gap in power. When Luffy encountered Smoker in Loguetown, it marked his first utterly helpless battle, after sweeping through East Blue's strongest foes and earning a 30 million berry bounty. Smoker handled him with ease. If it weren't for having a powerful father, Luffy would have been shipped to the Grand Line on a marine vessel, though his destination would have been Impel Down. During Luffy's desert battle with Crocodile, this was his first real brush with death since entering the Grand Line after his unstoppable streak. At the time, Luffy's attacks seemed fierce, but they barely dealt any damage. He couldn't even touch Crocodile's Logia form and could only resort to tricks like trying to swallow him with his rubber powers. Crocodile, on the other hand, crushed Luffy as easily as stepping on an ant. Luffy was impaled by Crocodile's hook and sucked into quicksand, though Robin later rescued him. At that point, no one could see how Luffy could possibly win. When the Straw Hat crew encountered Aokiji, it was their first contact with a Marine Admiral, and they had no idea what such beings were capable of. The crew acted casual around Aokiji, who had frightened Chopper. However, Robin, who had seen real power before, was paralyzed with fear. Only she knew what level of opponent they were facing. Aokiji had the power to easily wipe out the entire crew. The 4 strongest members, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Robin, were instantly defeated. Luffy's strongest techniques at the time, the Desert Spada that had pierced through Crocodile's desert and the Gomu Gomu no Storm that had finished him off, couldn't even scratch Aokiji. This encounter truly established the overwhelming presence that admirals would represent. When the Straw Hats encountered Kuma during their escape at Sabaody, although we now know Kuma was trying to save them, the crew had no knowledge of his connection to the Revolutionary Army at the time. Kuma had already demonstrated his terrifying abilities at Thriller Bark, though that incident was downplayed since Zoro sacrificed himself to save everyone. That glimpse of hope amid despair made it seem less desperate. However, from the Straw Hats' perspective, Sabaody was their most hopeless and powerless moment. The crew was already exhausted from fighting a pacifista. Zoro had been hit by Kizaru's laser. Chopper had desperately consumed 3 rumble balls, and Luffy watched helplessly as his companions vanished one by one, completely unable to resist, both physically and mentally exhausted. When Luffy knelt on the ground, glaring fiercely at Kuma, you could feel the absolute despair. During Luffy's fight with Magellan, by current standards, Magellan had many weaknesses, but calling him a location-restricted admiral isn't far-fetched. Luffy's situation in Impel Down was truly desperate, even more oppressive than facing the Blackbeard pirates. Luffy was like a mantis stuck in a spider's web. No matter how much he struggled, death seemed certain. Even the Blackbeard pirates and Ivankov were defeated, and although Luffy could briefly fight back using his brother's abilities, once Magellan unleashed his ultimate technique, everyone had to run. At that point, even with 10 lives, Luffy had 0 chance of victory against Magellan. Then came the Summit War, where, as Aokiji had told Luffy, "This stage is too early for you." Apart from the Whitebeard pirates, Luffy was insignificant on the battlefield, instantly defeated by Mihawk, dominated by Smoker. If Sabaody represented the Straw Hats' most desperate moment, the Summit War was Luffy's personal lowest point. Feeling Ace die in his arms, his heart shattered, crying until he lost consciousness. This was when the usually unstoppable Luffy blamed himself for being weak and completely lost his will to continue. When the assassination attempt on Big Mom failed on Whole Cake Island, and they were being pursued, they couldn't even scratch Big Mom's health bar despite going all out. The massive encirclement of Big Mom's forces throughout Tato Land created a truly hopeless situation. This was probably the Straw Hats' most costly venture. Although they recovered, Sanji and Brook managed to steal a road poneglyph rubbing, a win. They lost Pedro and Pound, with Picom's fate unknown. The casualties were severe. Later, against Katakuri, it seemed hopeless as neither Gear 2nd, 3rd, nor 4th could prevail. Even after awakening Future Sight and developing Snakeman, Luffy could only fight Katakuri on equal terms. This unusually long battle with Katakuri never reached a clear conclusion in terms of pure strength, making it one of the most unique fights. They definitely didn't come out ahead in this encounter. In Luffy's battle with Kaido, one casual club swing from Kaido showed everyone the vast gap between their powers. Ironically, Luffy was bearing the title of Fifth Emperor at the time. Kaido's mockery of, "So you want to be what kind of king?" hit especially hard. It felt like Luffy would need some serious power-ups to stand a chance of winning. All of these were situations where Luffy had absolutely no chance of victory. However, there was one more time when Luffy came closest to death, when Buggy had him pinned to the execution platform for beheading. The blade was just a hair's breadth away from ending Luffy's life. It was truly desperate. He had struggled, begged, and even accepted his fate. At that point, only his background could save him. Every growth comes with desperate setbacks, and Luffy has experienced many. Although these battles seemed hopeless, Luffy managed to survive most of them for various reasons. As Luffy would say, "You might not need to use your connections, but you can't not have them. When victory is impossible, at least your background can save your life." If you enjoyed this deep dive into Luffy's most desperate battles, don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments below. Which defeat do you think was Luffy's most hopeless moment? Hit that like button and subscribe to Amy Chan for more One Piece analysis. Thanks for watching.